Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you're chiming in from. My name is Kathleen Hoke, and I'm a professor at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law. Here today to talk to you about the public health law courses and opportunities that students can engage in here at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law. I will stop saying the whole school name at some point, but it's ingrained in us to continually repeat that. I just want to let you know during the course of the webinar, if you're watching live, you may enter questions into the chat session and I should be able to see them and respond to them. Otherwise, if folks have questions after the fact, or if you're watching this not live and you have questions, you can reach out to the admissions office at admissions@law.umaryland.edu. You can certainly call them anytime at 410-706-3492. And if there are specific questions that they need to direct to me, they will do so. So today, as I said, I want to talk to you about the health law program with a specific focus on public health. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a 1992 graduate of the University of Maryland, not then Carey School of Law. I spent the early part of my career first doing a clerkship with an appellate judge here in Maryland, and then I worked in private practice doing litigation for a period of time, and then I worked for several years at the Maryland Office of the Attorney General, working initially on litigation, anything ranging from discrimination cases to correctional litigation, in a variety of different courts, so federal court, state court, and also administrative hearings. Then I transitioned to become a special assistant to the Attorney General of Maryland, then Joe Curran, to work on a variety of different public health oriented issues for the Attorney General, including tobacco regulation in particular. This would have been the era after the major tobacco companies signed the Master Settlement Agreement, which meant a lot of money was coming into the states to deal with tobacco regulation. As a result, we were able to develop a significant amount of policy designed to prevent and reduce youth access to tobacco, to prevent and reduce indoor smoking of tobacco and involuntary exposure to tobacco products. I worked on other initiatives as well, some with the Consumer Protection Division associated with protecting consumers from abusive tactics. Then as I was working at the Attorney General's office, we created the Center for Tobacco Regulation, Litigation, and Advocacy here at the University of Maryland School of Law. It was a joint initiative at the time between the Attorney General's office, the School of Law, and the State Department of Health and Mental Hygiene here in Maryland. And at that time, the design was to provide assistance to local health departments that likewise were getting some of this funding under the Master Settlement Agreement to do policy work. As a result of having helped create the center, the law school offered me the opportunity to return, and I jumped at the chance to join in this lovely, what was then a new building, shockingly 15 years ago now, but still a very nice building, to return back to the law school to run the Legal Resource Center. So that's what I have been doing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Legal Resource Center as well as the Network for Public Health Law, the two things that I do here in addition to teaching. With respect to the course offerings that I'm going to focus on today, there are really two particular course offerings that I'm going to reference. The first is a course that we offer in the fall, and that's called Public Health and the Law. It's a 2-credit classroom course that has an exam at the end of the semester. I currently am teaching that class, and it is really a very flexible class or fluid class in that we address current issues in public health. We start the semester with a definition and an explanation of what is public health law, what do public health lawyers do, what is the role of the Constitution with respect to public health, how does the federal regulatory system work with respect to public health, how do state and local laws relating to public health get passed. We do a little segment on epidemiology. Don't be afraid if you're not a science person. It's very manageable for lawyers. But to understand the science, the research behind policy change in public health. And then the rest of the semester is spent topically on different areas of interest. We may discuss emergency preparedness one day and food policy the next. Often we do a course on housing and the intersection of housing and health, as well as vaccine policy. So during the second half of the semester, it's not the same every year, and I try to leave a couple of classes open at the end of the semester, and in the beginning of the semester I work with students on what they're interested in talking about at the end of the semester. That also means students get the opportunity to engage a little, because if you suggest an idea, I'm going to have you co-teach at least part of that class with me. So hopefully you can see that that course offering is dynamic. It's something that isn't necessarily the same from semester to semester, and is able to keep up with what the current issues are in public health, while at the same time providing you that foundation of how to look at public health laws from a science perspective, as well as what are the legal issues commonly raised when dealing with public health law. The second course is the Public Health Law Clinic. That's offered in the spring semester. It is a 6-credit clinic, so it's a pretty substantial course. Students in that clinic work between 25 and 30 hours a week on their clinical obligations. What does this mean if you don't know what a law school clinic is? Law school clinics allow students the opportunity to practice law under the supervision of trained, experienced, barred lawyers, including myself, for my clinic, so that you can have the real life experience, what would be a real life experience of a particular type of practice. So for us, it's a public health law practice. I am the director of the Public Health Law Clinic, and that course is structured similar to most of the clinics, where there is a classroom component. There is some repetition in that course with the stand-up course, but we do that foundational: what is public health law? What are the common legal issues that are raised? We do talk about understanding epidemiology, but really in a slightly more in-depth way in the clinical program. We also talk about the kind of details about how a bill becomes a law in Maryland in particular, because we work a lot with the Maryland legislature. And then there are skills sessions. There are opportunities for students to do presentations to their class, to engage in class debate, to do preparations for meetings or presentations or giving testimony that they're going to do. We use classroom time to allow the students to practice with their classmates, serving as listeners and giving feedback. So the course is, again, somewhat dynamic. The subject matters will also depend on what the students are working on during the course of the Public Health Law Clinic offering. Within what is the work that is done in the Public Health Law Clinic? Well, it really comes from generally two sources, maybe we could add a third. First, the Legal Resource Center for Public Health Policy. I mentioned it earlier, as it was created initially as the Center for Tobacco Regulation. It is now the Legal Resource Center for Public Health Policy, because we do more than tobacco regulation there. You might hear me refer to it as the center or the LRC. The LRC is funded by the State Department of Health and Mental Hygiene here in Maryland to provide technical legal assistance to state and local public health officials, legislators, advocacy organizations, law enforcement officials, researchers, and others working to use law and policy to improve public health. Specific funding right now focuses on tobacco regulation, injury prevention, and problem gambling. So these are the subject matter areas in which we offer this technical expertise. We are seeking, always looking at additional funding opportunities to expand the offerings or the type of assistance that we can provide under the Legal Resource Center. The Legal Resource Center was established in 2001 and has been fully operational over the course of the last 16 years. I have directed the program for the last 15 years. And then the other source of work comes from the Network for Public Health Law. The Network for Public Health Law is funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We operate the Eastern region here out of the University of Maryland School of Law. that we provide that same type of assistance that I talked about with the LRC to state and local public health officials, legislators, advocacy organizations, etc., but throughout the entire Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast part of the country. We also are part of a national network comprised of 4 other regions, so together we cover the entire country. The the Network for Public Health Law also has some subject matter specialties based on the staffing here, and those are environmental health, food safety, and injury prevention, as well as oral health. And there are, between the Legal Resource Center and the Network for Public Health Law, there are 6 other attorneys working with us who work with the Public Health Law Clinic. 2 of those supervising attorneys also have their master's in public health, so they can really help us when it comes to understanding the epidemiology or the science base for the policy that we're working on. And then we have a food safety expert attorney working with us, as well as younger attorneys who are recent law school graduates, because we do like to provide that experience for our graduates as well here, who are learning the ropes of public health law practice. They tend to be some of the favorites for the students in the clinic because they can relate much more to where you are in your clinic, and often students will use them as a sounding board. We also have a program manager for both the Legal Resource Center and the network, and she operates as our chief of staff, really helping students with any of the administrative details of practicing. So in addition to understanding the network and the Legal Resource Center, and I'll give you sites for their websites in a moment. What are the kind of projects that students are doing? I've only given you some generic language here. Well, I can tell you about some of the work students are doing now and students have done in the past. So first, each spring, the Maryland legislature meets, its session opens really at the same time as our session for the spring semester begins in mid-January and runs through early April. So it coincides quite nicely with the semester. In fact, there are 12 days left in the Maryland General Assembly session as I sit here talking to you today on March 30th. So our students during the course of this semester have testified on 6 bills pending in the Maryland legislature, anything from increasing access to foods at farmers market through allowing increased use of SNAP benefits, what used to be called food stamps. So encouraging folks who are using SNAP benefits to go to farmers markets by doubling their access to healthy foods with the dollars that they have under SNAP. This also then helps and supports, of course, our agricultural community in Maryland, which is significant. So that is one bill that students testified on. Students also testified on a bill that would reduce the level of lead in a child's blood for mandatory reporting to certain agencies so that there can be a response and perhaps appropriate treatment or enforcement with respect to housing issues or other issues associated with exposure to lead, reducing that level. Students have worked on a bill that would increase the age of access to tobacco products to 21, testifying in the Maryland legislature in the Senate. Students have testified on a bill that would have altered the hours during which a provisional driver's licensee may operate a vehicle. Currently, they may operate a vehicle except between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. and midnight and 6 a.m. and this would have pushed the time back to 10 p.m. The student did research and identified data that supported that between 10 p.m. and midnight are particularly dangerous hours on the road for young people, supporting a reason to not allow particularly inexperienced drivers to be on the road. So those are some examples of bills that students testified on. So when I say they testified on them, first, they did research into whether there's an evidence base to support the policy at issue. They reviewed the bill that was pending to determine if it would accomplish the public health goals that it was seeking to accomplish, whether there are any legal hurdles or legal gaps in the bill that needed to be addressed. They looked at what the law is in other states in the same area, focusing first on states around Maryland and then more broadly throughout the country. And then they prepared written testimony and likely a fact sheet accompanying that testimony. This would be their written testimony that describes the bill, what the bill would accomplish, how it would accomplish, and addressing any of those legal issues that they found during their research. And then the students got to go to Annapolis, Maryland, which is only 35 minutes or so down the street from the law school, and testify before a committee of the Maryland General Assembly. This will be a committee with either on the House side 20 plus members, on the Senate side approximately 12 to 14 members. Students then can get asked questions about the bill. They will also provide follow-up information after the hearing if there are questions asked during the hearing. So it's a very exciting opportunity for our students to do this research and then have the culminating experience of testifying on the bill with the legislature. This year we were really lucky because we had students who we were asked by the Health and Government Operations Committee to provide some assistance on opioid-related legislation. And a team of our students did a summary of all 40 plus bills that were pending related to opioids in the Maryland General Assembly. As a result of the high quality and quick turnaround of their work, they were invited to attend the House Opioid Work Group meeting, during which one of my students sat at the table answering questions for over a half an hour. I frankly sat there in awe of his capacity to respond to those questions so thoroughly and accurately after having the assignment for approximately 1 week. So it can be demanding and it can be challenging, but it can be so rewarding. That student now actually has, we have invited him to attend the CDC's National Drug Abuse and Heroin Summit in April in Atlanta. It's a national conference looking at the dynamics of opioid use and abuse in this country, and particularly looking at how law and policy change can interrupt that use and abuse pattern and work toward prevention. So as a result of doing this work, we've decided to invite that student with a staff member to attend the conference. Other work that students do during the course of a semester includes presentation at conferences. So we have had students who have presented posters and or oral presentations at the annual conference for the American Public Health Association, for the National Conference on Tobacco or Health, for the biannual Public Health Law Conference, and other conferences throughout the year. Again, it's all about timing. We've had students who testified to federal regulatory bodies at public hearings and the like. So depending on the semester and what the opportunities are, we like to get students out to allow them to do presentations, particularly one where they can be asked interactive questions so that they can really fully explore the issue that they've conducted a significant amount of research on. We also have students who are working on 50-state surveys. It might be an area of the law where we've been asked what's going on around the country with respect to allowing schools to stockpile EpiPens, for example. So in many school districts, the child is allowed to bring his or her own EpiPen, have it stored in the nurse's office. But many children experience anaphylaxis associated with an unknown allergy, and allowing the nurse's office or the school to otherwise stockpile EpiPens can be life-saving. And so we had inquiries from some states wondering what other states were doing to encourage safely the ability to stockpile EpiPens for this reason. So our students did a 50-state survey looking at the states from the laws from all 50 states, compiled that into a chart, and then prepared an issue brief, a summary of what the problem was, what the potential solutions were, what was going on around the country, and what kind of a good model might be for states looking to either add stockpiling or enhance their stockpiling law as it is. So that's just one example. Similar work has been done in any of the subject matter areas that we cover. Specifically now we have some students this semester working on child labor laws, helping us to identify what in today's society are the biggest issues with respect to children who are injured while at work. there are some suggestions that agricultural work for particularly young people is particularly dangerous. And so our students are trying to uncover whether that suggestion is true, whether that guess by one of our clients is actually accurate, and researching to find the data to support that, as well as then looking at all of the state laws that govern whether and when children may work. Similar projects in telemental health, in water fluoridation, in meth lab remediation. So this looked at all of the state laws and some local laws that regulated when and how a property that had been used for the creation of crystal meth, to be able to be then inhabited by other people. So there are a lot of toxins left behind after meth production, and so what are the laws about remediation and disclosure to future buyers? So again, another 50-state survey and issue brief. So we've done a lot of work in those areas, and a lot of work in food policy as well, food safety and food policy, particularly as the federal government recently passed the Food Safety Modernization Act, really altering the responsibilities of state and local governments with respect to food safety. And so our role was to explain to those state and local regulators what their jobs were under the Food Safety Modernization Act. And so students support us in all of that work during the course of the semester here. Again, each semester is going to be different. The opportunities are going to be different. We have had students who were able to submit amicus briefs supporting a particular position in a court case, students who were able to testify to federal regulatory agencies because they were having open hearings, students who prepared written comments to proposed state and federal regulations, students who have collaborated and coordinated with community organizations and others to identify policy options that might exist to address a problem. So they're actually in the community working with community groups to identify the problems, but the hard work of coming up with law and policy solutions that are effective, that can actually get passed, and that can be effectively enforced with the resources available. So our students are in the community looking to help resolve these issues. So again, the work depends each semester on the issues that are coming up. We do tend to have work that stays on the cutting edge. So I can't promise what it would be for any of you interested in coming to the law school, because that would be a couple of years from now. So in addition to the two courses, the public health law course as well as the clinic, there are other opportunities for students to get exposure to what it means to practice public health law during their time here at Maryland Carey. First is through our extensive internship program. The public health program is really part of the law and healthcare program, and the law and healthcare program boasts hundreds of internship opportunities for students, and the ability for a student to identify an internship opportunity, do a little bit of the legwork, and get that approved for their own placement. So with respect to public health, we have had students who are able to work at nonprofit organizations, at state and local governments, as well as federal agencies during the course of their time here in law school. So for credit, depending on the number of hours they work under the supervision of an attorney in the field, and are providing research and writing, and again, attending meetings and learning about what it means to practice public health law. So the opportunities for internships is incredible here at Maryland Carey, particularly for our law and healthcare program. Similarly, the environmental law program has a series of internships as well, an array of them in environmental law, some that cross over into what we call environmental health, and that's more of a public health realm as well. And so we work collaboratively with both the law and healthcare program as well as the environmental law program to make sure those students who are interested in public health law are given the opportunity to go out into the field and practice with an experienced attorney, so they can understand, is this really what I want to do, and to better get the nuance down of what they are interested in doing as part of their career. So if students come here and focus on public health law, take the public health law courses that are offered, take an internship, where do they go from here? Well, I'm happy to report that some of them stay here because I employ some of them with the Network for Public Health Law and the Legal Resource Center for Public Health Policy. We do offer several opportunities for fellowships or staff attorney positions for our graduates who are interested in the work that we do. Again, what's available really depends on who's coming and going, but these are entry-level positions designed to expose people more deeply to public health law practice within the kind of safe confines of the law school. And then those students typically enter out into the workforce able to get in at a higher level than they might otherwise be able to get in. Where do the students go otherwise? And some use the fellowships here as a stepping stone, and others can directly go out. But the probably majority of our students who are interested in public health policy are interested in working for the government, whether that's the federal, state, or local government. And we sure have an array of students who have gone on to a government practice. I can tell you that we have graduates who came through the Public Health Law Clinic who are now working for the Food and Drug Administration, for the CDC, for any of the departments within the Department of Health, the offices within the Department of Health and Human Services. There are other federal agencies where students are situated as well, those being the key ones from a public health perspective. At the state level, we have many students who are at the state health department doing policy analysis or working closely with the legislature in government relations. We have students working at the Office of the Attorney General for either the health department or the Maryland Department of the Environment, where they are working on health policy or environmental health policy, as well as providing advice and counsel to the agency on regulatory matters. We have students who transition to work at the state level at the Department of Legislative Services. This is the unit that provides legal assistance and support to the Maryland legislature. So every bill that gets drafted and at the Maryland General Assembly, which is in excess of 2,000 a year, is drafted by a policy analyst, many of whom are attorneys, and many who came from Maryland Carey Law School. Those who come through the public health law program typically are then drafting the public health related bills that members are interested in during that session. They are also doing the policy analysis, then preparing the fiscal and policy note for each of those bills. They are likewise also staffing task forces and work groups that are working on particular issues in public health. So again, conducting the research and analysis, presenting to the work group and the task force, responding to questions that might be raised. It's a very interesting job because it too changes as the issues of importance change over the course of time for legislators. But it can be very interesting to be in on how a bill, not just how a bill became a law, how a bill became a bill, to understand who identified the problem, how it was identified, and how it was determined that law and policy change were the right way to address this particular problem. At the local level, we have students who work at the for the local legislatures, for the county attorney's office, and for the local health department. So again, doing all of that same work, but at the local level. To be frank, we always say in public health that the best place to innovate and to have effective public health policy is at the local level. So no one should think that that's the lowest level of job that's available. It might be considered the highest importance is providing that assistance to the local health departments throughout the country. We certainly have students who go into NGOs or non-government organizations, nonprofit organizations, American Cancer Society, American Lung Association, and they are providing any number of resources, again, or as policy analysts or as government relations folks. We have many students who enter into private practice, those students who are interested in working in the private practice but want a deeper understanding of public health law. Again, sometimes they might be working for industries that are being regulated by public health regulation, but it's important that they have a foundational understanding of the goals of public health law, the goals of public health officials, so that when working with their clients, they can understand, where there might be meeting points, where there might be areas of collaboration between the regulators and the regulated. So we have many students who enter into private practice. Generally, again, the students who are our graduates who are entering into the work world they can be doing lobbying, policy analysis, government relations, doing compliance and enforcement of state, federal, or local laws and regulations. They might be doing legislative drafting or regulatory drafting, as well as providing advice and counsel to the organization they're working with, or more broadly, throughout a community if they're working for an association or an alliance of different organizations. And again, these can take in any subject matter in public health. So that's really that's the experience for a student who comes in, goes through the public health law courses and internship experiences, and where they might find themselves at the end of the day. The great thing about the program is you don't have to really worry about it until your second year, because your first year curriculum is pretty well set. You do have an elective opportunity in the spring, and we have recommendations for students who are interested in public health of what to take, but I'm rushing ahead of myself. You'll come see me once you get started, and we'll worry about that come your spring semester of second year. But once you hit second year, then there is really no end to the opportunities for you to take courses here that will expand your ability to function effectively as a public health lawyer. So I just want to give you a couple of websites to check out so you can see the work that our students are doing. So the Network for Public Health Law website is networkforphl.org. You can go to that website and you will see some of the 50 state surveys and issue briefs and fact sheets and blogs that I've mentioned to you. The whole network is up there, not just the Eastern region and not just our student work, but if you pick through them, you can see many of the ones that I've referenced to you are published there, and the students are acknowledged at the bottom of those reports. You can see the type of work that the students are doing in the clinic. You should also use that website, the networkforpublichealthlaw.org website, to join our student network, even if you're not here at law school, if you're in undergraduate, if you're in a public health graduate program, or it doesn't matter, anyone can join the student network, and you get information about career development in public health, opportunities for students to attend conferences or events on scholarship or the like over the course of your experience. And then it helps you stay in tune with what's going on in public health. We have a bi-weekly alert that comes out, really talking about the work that we're doing that tracks with what's going on out there in the public health world. So I encourage you to look at the network's website and join the student network so that you can access all of the resources. And then the Legal Resource Center for Public Health Policy, the website is law.umaryland.edu/public health. Maybe it's / I can never get that right. I'm sure you'll find it if you type in public health. And there too you will see many of the resources that we have provided there, fact sheets, issue briefs, 50 state surveys that were produced by students. And again, our students are acknowledged there so they can refer to it in job interviews or put it on their resume and show their mom and dad, because those are people who are usually very proud of seeing their students work out there. We also do have a student blog through the Network for Public Health Law, and you can find our students published there as well. Finally, many of our students are interested in what they should be doing in summers, and that's, again, rushing ahead a little bit, but we certainly have opportunities for students within the law school and outside of the law school to use that more free time during the summer to do internships, whether paid or unpaid or for credit or not for credit during the summer. So I had forgot to mention that earlier, so I wanted to wrap up letting you know that 24/7, 365, we can keep you in a public health law practice or experience during your time here at Maryland Carey Law. So I'm done. I don't see any questions have popped up on the screen, so I'm going to wait a moment to see if those folks who are in attendance have any questions. You certainly can feel free to post them now. So I don't see any questions coming into the chat. We have reached probably the end of my ability to sit here and talk about my job in any interesting way. I could talk in minutia to you about stuff that would probably ultimately bore you. I hope what you can hear from me is that the opportunities are vast for students here who are interested in public health law, and that we are an energetic and enthusiastic faculty, as well as the staff who work with me in the network and the Legal Resource Center. We love having the student resource to help expand the reach of our work, and we love really introducing young attorneys to the possibility of a public health law practice. So we hope that you will come to the University of Maryland Carey School of Law, join the health law program, join the environmental law program, and take us up on some of the public health law work that we do here. Thank you so much.